Welcome everybody to Strategies with Grammar-Based Text. I am Melissa Ferguson. I'm a curriculum manager at Bellringers Digital, and I am joined by my coworker Hannah, who is also a curriculum manager. And we're going to be talking about some top strategies that you can use with your grammar-based text. This is for both Spanish and French, so it kind of goes across the two languages, different things that you can use no matter what your language is that you're teaching. My agenda disappeared, but we're going to be looking at a bunch of different strategies for vocabulary, grammar, authentic resources, speaking, making class fun, and setting up routines. I think there might have been a couple of more in there that I'm not remembering off the top of my head, but we'll be talking about those. I'll be sharing some great strategies, and then I'm also going to give you time to share some of your own so that we can learn from each other and share what works best in our classrooms. So when we come to those, you can unmute if you want to, or you can type it into the chat, whatever it is that you want to do. That way we can learn from each other and get even more great ideas. So we'll start with our first strategy, which is pre-teaching vocabulary. And your Bellringers Digital text is great with giving you resources to help teach the vocabulary that your students need to succeed in your class. So the first thing that we have is your vocabulary list. So I have an example of a Spanish one, and I just wanted to point out how these are chunked. So your students, they can only take so much in at a time for their brains. So these are done into more manageable chunks of vocabulary, and you can see that it's got the nice border around it, and these have their native speaker audio with them as well. And I'm always telling the story about how my students, when I was teaching with Bellringers Digital this past school year, absolutely loved the native speaker audio. I had an interactive TV, and I would just click on that audio, and after my students heard it, they'd automatically repeat it. I didn't have to ask them to repeat the vocabulary or anything like that. They just spontaneously did, because it's so interesting sounding. You know, it's different and it's so authentic that they just can't help but want to imitate it themselves. So this is a great way to start with your vocabulary, is to just use the list and use how organized it is, and use that audio, because that way the students, they're getting that authentic sound, and it's motivating to them to be able to copy it. Then you're going to present your vocabulary. In Bellringers Digital, we have great resources set up that you can use to present your vocabulary. We've got slideshows where it shows it in context. So kind of like down here on the bottom right, que hay en la mochila. This is helping you to figure out what the vocabulary is. You can work through these slides, discuss them with your students, and it's going to help them understand it better. We have sample conversations, and these all come with audio as well. So you can have your students listen to them. You can have your students dramatize them. They can read them, you know, like pre-read them before you work through them. These words in blue right here are words that are translated. So if this were an actual live page and I didn't know what the word sampler meant, I could hover over it and a translation would automatically pop up, which makes it a lot easier for your students to understand them. And we have videos. So down here on the bottom, we have Friends with Mr. Ennis, where he takes the vocabulary and breaks it down. His videos are kind of like zany and really fun. And then up here we have Spanish Playground. They talk entirely in Spanish, and their situations that they present are really fun, just really thorough, and uses like a little bit of language, but in such a rich way that it really helps the students to understand it. And you can also take your vocabulary offline. So I gave a few suggestions here. So you should have word walls in your classroom. I've got an example of a question word poster that Bellringers Digital provides. But anytime that you're working on words, if it's conducive to your classroom, stick some words up or label things in your classroom to help your students understand it better. You can have your students make flashcards, and I would do this all the time, because then you can use those flashcards for so many things: games, speaking activities. They can use them for review. They're just so useful to have. And you can have props in your classroom to help bring the words to life as well. So even if that's just a printout and you're talking about ice cream, so you have a picture of an ice cream and you're talking about it, or if you've got plastic foods, things like that, those are great things. Your students are going to love to get their hands on them as well. So it's really useful to have those things. It just brings some interest into the classroom. You can also do a little bit of total physical response if your words are conducive to it. I didn't put that on here, but that's another great way, just having your students do some sort of motion to get that word into their muscles and into their brains. And then whenever you come back to that word, if your students don't know what that word is, you can do the motion and it usually jogs their memory so that they can remember, oh yeah, I remember that, what that word is. But I also want to put it to you guys. So what's your favorite strategy for teaching vocabulary so that we can learn from each other? So you can unmute your microphone or you can jump in the chat and go ahead and share with us something that you like to do when you're teaching vocabulary.
I see that Martha said that she has her students role play. I think those sample conversations in the vocabulary section,
Yes.
which would be fun.
That's an awesome idea.
I usually just not dictate, but I go over the words myself. Then I do the audio so they can get used to the different accents of the native speakers, and I have them draw it.
Awesome.
Anything that's possible. Not everything can be drawn, but it gives me the opportunity to see the students that are very shy and they feel they cannot be part of the class because they don't speak the language. I could pull them in through drawings and images. And that has worked in the past. Even my native speakers that are shy, that they don't want to speak anything, the second I give them the opportunity to draw, they shine.
Yes, I think you're so right that students, they love to draw, even if they think they're a horrible artist, they still like it. Something about it just is relaxing and not quite as stressful as feeling like they have to speak the language. So yeah, absolutely. Drawing is a great idea. Looking at the chat. Vocab sheets, daily practice activities. Yes, we're going to come to the practice activities in a little bit. Pear Deck, if you guys haven't used Pear Deck, Connor just mentioned that one. My students absolutely love Pear Deck. Their flashcard factory is so much fun, where they one person draws and one person writes a sentence, and it's just a whole lot of fun. So yeah, thank you for sharing that one. Charades, yes, that's a really good one. Loteria, yes, playing games with your students is huge, and we're going to talk about games in a little bit as well. Stories, yes, if you're comfortable with stories, if you're like dipping your toes into doing CI, stories are a huge thing to do for your vocabulary. So awesome. Quizlet, yes, I love Quizlet. Quizlet Live is a lot of fun. Book It is another great thing that you can use. Amy has a game called Bop. Not sure what that is, but it does sound like it's really fun. Maybe Amy, you could like do a quick little description in the chat for us as to what Bop is. Okay, so yeah, thank you guys for sharing your strategies for vocabulary. There are so many things that you can do with vocab, and it's really just what's going to work best for your students, what works best for the vocabulary list that you're currently on, and what are you comfortable with. So yes, awesome ideas. Thank you, everybody. The next thing that we're going to look at is strategies for making grammar easy, because sometimes grammar can be a little bit stressful. So Voces Digital does everything we can to break that grammar down and make it easier for your students to read. So when you go into your text, you're going to see that grammar notes are denoted with the orange border around them. So whenever your students see that orange, they're going to know, okay, this is something very important that I need to know. They're organized and they're super concise, so that there's not a bunch of extra fluff, and their students can very easily see, like in the charts, this is exactly what I need to know, this is important, and this is how it's explained. So it makes it very easy for your students to pick out that information. It's organized so that it's easy for them to process. There's my agenda. That's odd, it got moved. Sorry, everybody. All right, so then we're going to present the grammar in context. We've got, just like with the vocabulary, we have slideshows. So you can see down here at the very bottom, some people having a conversation about food. It's like almost like a comic strip, but you've got that example there. And then you've got a prompt to get your students asking each other so that they're using the vocabulary themselves. So those slideshows are really good for putting the grammar into context in a very easily modeled way. We also have more sample conversations. So these are ones that have more of the grammar to them. So you can see that. And like we had mentioned before, that you can have your students dramatize it. You can have them work with partners. They can perform it for the class. You can just have them listen to it, maybe illustrate the conversation. Lots of things that you can do with this to help students understand how the grammar is used in an actual context. And we do have some more videos. More of our Spanish playground ones are really good at bringing that grammar to life. And I'm going to just go back for a second. If you haven't checked it out, Amy described her game Bop in the chat. And for those that are catching a replay, she says they put a stick with a sponge on the end. Somebody holds it. They have a whiteboard with a word in English. Say another word. And then person with the other word, before they bop them, they have to find the word. So that's awesome. Thank you, Amy, for sharing that with us. All right, after you've looked at all of the resources for the grammar, it's really important to provide practice. Your students need to get in there and they need to practice the vocabulary. They need to practice the grammar to get used to what it is. So we have all kinds of great activities that you can do. Some of them are self-graded. Some of them are things that you can go in and you can give feedback to. We'll talk about feedback in a little bit as well. But here's a couple of examples. This one is just giving one word in a blank. We have a multiple choice here. You can do matching, short answers, longer answers, sorting, all kinds of great ways to give your students varied practice so that they're seeing the same things over and over, but it doesn't feel old. It doesn't feel like, oh, this is overdone, because we have so many different activities that everything feels new. And over on the side, I just wanted to give you an idea of like how robust this practice is that we give you in Voces Digital. So this is an example from Voces por el Mundo. I think level 1 is where I took it from. And you can see for just talking about school vocabulary itself, students have 8 different activities that they can do. The lightning little thing over here shows it's auto-graded. Talking about gender of nouns, there's a whole other big group. So different ways for students to practice this stuff so that they get comfortable with it in a low risk. These are just practice activities, formative assessment kind of way. And yes, Hannah pointed out, these are similar in French. I just kind of like bopped in between different titles as I was taking my screenshots. So yes, whatever you see in Spanish, you're going to see in French as well. All right, so another strategy is your strategies for interpersonal skills, because one of the huge things about learning a new language is being able to talk to people in that new language. So Voces Digital gives you great strategies for using interpersonal skills, getting your students to talk with one another. So first we have our student talk activities. Our Let's Talk activities are always denoted in blue, so they really stick out like that. And it's a great way to get your students talking to each other. And it's not a scripted way, but we do give a prompt so that it's very clear to students, here's what you need to do, and gives them that guidance that they need to take the language that they know and actually put it to use. We also do have some get to know your classmates activities. This one over here was taken from an activity where students are going to compare themselves to a partner and then fill in this Venn diagram. What is their partner different from them? How are they different from their partner? And what do the two of them have in common? So a really great way to take vocabulary and grammar that they know and get to know their classmates and start to build community that way. We also have interactive recording activities. This is great because if you have a big class and you really want to hear each student speak, it can be a classroom management nightmare if you want to listen to every single person individually. With our recording, you can have them do it on their own, and then you can go back on your own time and you can listen to that without having to take away any class time for that. So we've got these as follow-ups to interview videos, so students can listen to a native speaker talk about themselves and then record themselves responding to a prompt that's very similar to what they heard discussed in the video, so that they're relating what they heard in the video to themselves and relating to those people that they heard in the video. We also have some recorded partner conversations, so you can pair your students up and say, all right, now you two are going to talk about this, record your conversation. And that way you're listening to 2 students at the same time, having a spontaneous conversation where they're working with each other and getting to know each other. So you can see the evidence of that. And we also have some native speaker prompts to respond to. So more scripted, as if they're like simulating a conversation, will give you a context of some sort, like this one saying you're not feeling well. So you are talking with your host mom about how you're not feeling well in France. So you're going to have they'll listen to their host mom and then record themselves responding. So it's like they're having an actual conversation with an actual French speaker, but it's all simulated. So very great for helping them to react in like real world kind of situations. And you can also take speaking activities offline. So one thing I mentioned was quiz trade. This is from Kagan Cooperative Learning. If you haven't heard of Kagan, Kagan, they have tons of cooperative learning activities that are so great that you can use for your world languages. My favorite is quiz trade. So I would write out a question on some cards and have students just walk around the classroom, ask the question on the card, answer it, and then trade and move on to other people. You can also use that with your students' vocabulary pictures, like if they did flashcards, have them walk around, hold a flashcard, ask a question about it, like going back to ice cream. If they have it, you maybe could ask, do you like ice cream? Yes, I like ice cream. And then trade your cards so that they're talking about different types of vocabulary. They're getting up, they're moving, they're off of their devices. And it's a great way to just give your students a break and encourage them to get to know each other and just give some positivity, like a really good feeling of this is really fun going in your classroom. Something else that I like to do, I just call it 5 conversations, is I'll just pose one class question to the class and I'll tell them, all right, now talk to 5 people. And when they do this, I'll tell them to slap 5, which is obviously optional. They might not be comfortable doing that, but if they are comfortable, slap 5, have the conversation, and then move on to another person. And after they've done 5, they just go ahead and sit down. So this can be a really quick speaking activity, and you can just move around the classroom. You can hear the students interacting as they're going. Just a really fast speaking activity to practice something really quick. Something else that works really well in my classes is just passing a ball around. So there'll be a question that we're working on, and sometimes if I don't have a ball, I'll just crumple up a piece of paper. Like I've got extra papers hanging around my classroom, I'll just crumple it up. We'll pass it around. Do you like basketball? Yes, I do. Pass it to the next person. Do you like basketball? No, I don't. And it just goes around and around. And it's really good. They love passing the ball for some reason. Just getting something in their hands is very motivating for my students. And it's a great way for you to just spot check. You're not going to hear every single person most likely, but it gives you a really good idea. And it gives students that little bit of tactile, like, okay, this is fun. And we're not just learning, we're actually doing something else. I see some stuff in the chat that I'm going to respond to real quick. Yes, Kagan, Kagan, cooperative learning. They have so many things. I took a training with them for a couple of like sessions, and it was just so good. Yes, I do supply the questions. So sometimes it's a list of questions, sometimes it's just one question, and then I'll give them like sentence stems that they can use to answer. It really just depends on the situation and how much scaffolding I think that my students need for those. But yeah, I do supply questions. Okay, so our next strategy is teaching with authentic resources. And your Voces digital subscription is so rich with authentic resources. So we'll take I'll look at a few of those. We have easy reading. So these will be things like memes or infographics, things that are taken off of social media. And, you know, depending on the level that your students are at, they will vary in their difficulty. Like the coffee one up here, this is super easy. And I think it might have been taken from introductory Spanish, if I remember correctly. But that's just so easy. And the picture helps the students to understand it. Something really easy like that for students to understand. Then they get a little bit more complicated, like this Olympics one. There's a bit more to read, but still you've got your pictures, great organization for students to actually interact with texts that are meant for native speakers. So they've got those. This one's a little bit like the numbers in there is a great way to talk about numbers with your students. So you can look at it first and have a discussion before they read it on their own. And then these are always followed up by some sort of activity. So I actually gave an example of the one that goes with the Olympics here, so you can see what kind of activity goes with that. But all of these have something to kind of just lead students through. Here's what you're reading. And now let's go through and understand everything together. Yes, these are all all of the presentations are going to be shared. So just keep your eye out for that, because yes, they will all be shared. All right, so another authentic resource we can get into our detailed reading. These are going to be for the upper levels. And so you can see we've got articles, advertisements, sometimes schedules. There's a lot more reading on here. Excuse me. So this is going to be for your upper level. So as they're working up, French 2, Spanish 2, things like that, there's going to be a lot more for them to read to give them that extra challenge that they have. Then we have all kinds of other media. This one was a video that I thought was really fun. So the students would watch the video and answer some questions about it. There are some things that are just audio to listen to, like some podcasts. We have YouTube videos, things like that. All kinds of media, very rich things to bring into your classroom and give your students a glimpse of the Spanish or French speaking world. So again, I want to throw this to you now. What's your favorite source for finding authentic resources? If you want to bring in an authentic resource about something, where do you go to search? You go to YouTube? Is there a certain website that you look at? Where's your favorite place to find authentic resources?
I usually check Voices first.
Good. Yeah.
And then I just do a comparison. Or I do both. I do whatever I find in Voices that's relatable to what I'm teaching. And then I do like a second one from YouTube that I probably used in the past, or I just view it like first thing in the morning just to see, to give those students the opportunity to see it more than once in different versions.
Awesome. Yes, awesome. Jill has suggested Claudia Elliott's material. Is that for Spanish?
Yes. She's a Spanish teacher and trainer.
Okay.
She has an academy, Growing with Spanish. It's for, I taught traditional for 22 years. With her guidance, transitioning over to CI has been a lot easier.
Okay.
I second that. I really wish Claudia would make some of the stories for Voces. They're really good. They're really good.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'm glad that you found that. Jody suggested De Mi Rancho a Tu Cocina. I feel like I've heard of that before. That sounds really fun for your Spanish classes. San Bombasso. Oh, I forgot about that one. Yes, that one is really good by Zachary Jones. It's really good. And websites from different countries. Yeah, there's so many places that you can find authentic resources. Find something that's a gem, and then just you can even build it into your Voces digital account so that your students have it right there as well by just using your Voces editor and uploading it. So great ways that you guys can bring in your own authentic resources, but we also have tons for you to use as well. All right, so our fifth strategy is exploring the target culture. So, I mean, we just did that with authentic resources, but there are so many more ways for you to take a look at the target culture together. So first, we have our cultural readings. Depending on the title that you're in and the level that your students are at, sometimes it might be in English, like we have over here on the right-hand side. And then other times it's going to be in the target language, like we have this French example here. So it just, again, depends on the level that your students are at. But these are so rich with information, and they all include these beautiful images so that it's not just reading about something, but your students can see like, okay, this is what it actually looks like. And they can almost envision themselves there. And these pictures would be great conversational pieces, whether in English or even in the target language. Like these ones up here, they're so colorful that it would be great to talk about the colors and preferences. With the food down here, I would love to talk to my students about, do you think this looks delicious, or do you think this doesn't look delicious? Which one of these would you most like to try to eat? And these are all things that you could do in the target language just to go beyond what's actually just given here in your Voces Digital. So there's your cultural readings. And everything in Voces has pictures everywhere. That's one thing that I absolutely love about Voces Digital, is that every page has some sort of image on it to just give you that glimpse of the target country. So you've got, you know, this picture over here of people riding on back of a truck or something. I mean, just great pictures where students can take a look at it. You can discuss them with your classes. I mean, they don't need to be something that you just scroll by to get from one activity to the next. You can pause in the middle of your lesson and say, all right, let's look at this. What do you notice? What are the colors that you see? Why do you think they're doing this? Would you want to go here? Would you want to do this? So many great things that you can do. And these are just random things that were just kind of put in there to make the text richer for you, to draw more interest among your students. So culture is like my thing. Like I absolutely love culture. So I'd love to hear from all of you. What's your favorite cultural topic to teach? You can put it in the chat. You can unmute and talk about it. What's your favorite cultural topic to teach? And maybe we're going to discover some new ones today that we could research and build into our lessons for this upcoming school year. Celia Cruz, yes, she's very fun to talk about. My students absolutely loved her Rie Llora song. That was really fun. French art, capitals, holidays. Yes, holidays are so much fun. Immigration, legends, music, and food. I think food is probably the easiest because of everybody likes to talk about food and like there's such strong reactions to it. So yes, that's very fun to teach about. Traditions and legends, automobile industry. That's really interesting. That's something I hadn't thought about, but yeah, that would be a really good thing to talk about. Dance, art, bullfights. Yes, those are fun to talk about. Also emotionally charged sometimes. Differences in thinking. Oh, that's really cool that you can get into that and talk about blending cultures. That's super interesting. Theater, sports, famous artists, Day of the Dead. Yes, that is so much fun. Novels, awesome. Yes, culture it makes our classes so rich. So yes, there are so many great things to do with that. Teen culture. Yeah, that's really good. Geography and traveling. Excellent. Thanks, everybody. Okay, so our sixth strategy, give timely and meaningful feedback. So I showed you the examples of some activities that you can do with students. Voces makes it really easy for you to give feedback to your students quickly and in ways that normally you couldn't do if they were just handing in a piece of paper. So taking a look at that, your feedback options, we do have the automatic grading, which is great if it's just something where students are practicing something real quick and they can find out immediately how well they did and learn from that. So I love those for just really quick checkups on things like we just presented a topic, now try it and see how you did. And then we can go back and work on some more. And you can also give some written or audio feedback. So this one right here, I went into my own daughter's account and just added something to hers because she's my daughter. So I don't care if you guys see her score or whatever. And you can just type it in. I wrote, excellent job, Charlotte. If I wanted to talk to her, I could initialize the audio recording. I could say something like, hey, great job. You got this wrong for this reason. Things like that, so that you can make it very personal. And your students are really going to feel seen and understood because you're giving them that personal attention. And it's in a non-threatening way. So like if they might feel a little bit intimidated from getting some feedback from you in person, because that does happen sometimes. If they get it like that, it's like, okay, yes, I'm not intimidated. This is good. And we also have some great rubrics. These are all aligned with the actual standards so that you know that you are getting the best quality for your rubrics. And just looking at some examples here, we have a scale from 1 to 4. I think they can go up to a scale of 1 to 5, if I remember correctly. And this one is just gauging conversations. How much have I involved? And so you can see the different progressions as to how, okay, maybe you need a little bit more work here to like, you are doing absolutely fantastic. And it's so complete that students know exactly why they're receiving the score they did. There's no questions, there's no ambiguity of like, why did you say that I did this? Because it's just so complete with all of the descriptions of what students need to attain for that. Next strategy is making it fun. So we kind of got into this when we were talking about vocabulary. You guys started throwing out some games, which are absolutely amazing. And I think something that really sets world language classes apart from other classes is that we can play so many games with all of the vocabulary that we have. So yeah, you want to make your class fun. So we do supply some grammar and vocabulary games. So these are some examples that I pulled from Introductory French. coloring competition. I always had these broken crayons from whatever, so I just throw them in a box together and then give students a printout of some pictures, say a word, and then have them race to color over it. And yes, they broke the crayons even more, but it didn't matter because they were broken to begin with. Fly swatter is super fun. I think everybody's heard of fly swatter. I'm seeing some nodding. So yeah, we all know fly swatter. Bingo. I mean, you know, bingo is just bingo, but it's such a great way to practice your vocabulary. So that's really fun to do. And then I used to do conjugation races a lot, where I'd put students on teams, put them up on the front of the board, call something out like ser, yo, and they have to put the conjugation on there. So just a great way, like students like to compete, they get kind of fiercely competitive. So it's just something to bring some fun into the class and shake things up a little bit. So again, these are all in introductory French, but they can work for any language. So you don't have to be teaching introductory French. If you're teaching Spanish, you could jump into introductory French and check them out. So that's there for you. We also have some kinesthetic activities. So just things that kind of like bring conversation and movement together. For example, this take a stand activity. You're going to make some statements and you're going to designate parts of your room to represent their responses. So it takes all of that pressure of like, oh gosh, I have to speak the target language. No, you don't. You just have to move your body to indicate what your response is. So if you say yes to this or whatever, you go to this side of the room. If you have the opposite reaction, you go to this side of the room. Super easy, super low stress, and it breaks things up, gives students a stretch break. It can be even used as a brain break if you wanted to, but it's great at having them hear the language and respond to it. Another kinesthetic activity that I really love is dice conjugations. I bought these foam dice from a garage sale, just like I was walking by one day and I saw them on a table and thought, I have to have those for my classroom. I don't know what I'm going to do with them, but I have to have them. So then I figured out I could use them for dice conjugations. So I would give students two lists, a list of verbs, like maybe regular AR verbs in Spanish, and then a list of the subject pronouns. Each verb had a number and each subject pronoun had a number, and they'd roll the two dice and then put them together. So if they rolled like hablar for like number 5 was hablar and it was number 2, like 2, then they just say like two hablas and have to conjugate that way. So just something to like give them some tactile learning, and they love the foam dice for whatever reason. So that was a great partner thing for students to do. And we have our game center in Voces Digital. And I know you guys have been seeing trivia night throughout this workshop, so you're probably pretty well familiar with that. It's super fun. I did it last minute when some of my students were coming back from a field trip early. They weren't supposed to come to my class and they got back early, and I thought, what am I going to do? I have no lesson plan. So trivia night was something I just threw together really fast and really fun. You Decide is deciding on stories together. So it's like a choose your own adventure. Match, Roundup, and Flashcard Challenge are kind of like more rote practice of their vocabulary. And then you have your Story Shuffle, which is prompting students to create their own story. So great things that you can put your students to work on. They can, you could even have like leaderboards, show me your score, you know, things like that to kind of incentivize them to go a little bit further with that. But these are really fun. And these are all included in your Voces Digital subscription. All right, so which game do your students enjoy the most? Again, I want to throw this to you so that we're learning from each other. Which game do you play in your classroom that students love the most? You can put it in the chat or you can unmute and you can say something. Okay, I'm seeing some trivia night. Yes, 4 corners is really good. Yeah, that would be like to take a stand, but that would be like you had 4 options instead of just 2. So awesome. Story Shuffle, yes, that's fun, Hannah. This is to Patricia. Do they need accounts for all of these games to play? If you're using the Game Center, yes, they will need an account to get into it. Slap It, yes, that's really fun. I called mine Fast Hands, where you have like flashcards and you say something, the students have to slap it. That's really good. Book It is an absolute favorite of my students. Martha just suggested it, and so did Shirley. There's so many things to choose from for Book It, and it's free, so that's a huge plus. And yeah, my students absolutely love Book It, so good. Gimkit is fun too. Jeopardy, Fly Swatter, Quizlet, yes, Quizlet is really good as well. Avalanche conjugation race game. That sounds fun. Find someone who, yes, those are really good. So you just go around the classroom and they'll have a set of prompts and they have to find somebody that can answer yes to those questions, and you collect those signatures. That's great because then you can come back and you can have like a discussion with your class. Who in the class, blah, 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 and give your answers to that. So that's really good. Students can share what they found out. Quizzes is good. Yes. Edpuzzle. Okay. And our next one is establish and prioritize class routines, because you want to have, with all of this fun that's going on, you definitely need some routines so that students feel grounded and they know what to expect day to day, even though things are going to change up so many times. So at the beginning of class is a great time to have some sort of a warm up or a bell ringer. And it's great to tie these to the objective that you have in the class for that day. So you'll notice that we have can-do statements for so many things in our titles. So you could have that posted in your classroom. I know for some teacher evaluation models, you actually have to have that posted in the classroom. That was the case for me for the past 5 years of teaching. It absolutely had to be there. So you can just take that right out of VOCAS Digital and post it somewhere in your classroom. So students will come in and they're going to know this is exactly what we're doing today. And your admin can know that as well. Your bell ringer can take all kinds of different ways. You can have it tied to what you're actually learning. So like a review of what you did the day before. I also like to use authentic resources as bell ringers, like give students some sort of an infographic to look at and just interact with it very briefly. And that's a great way to just kind of get them into the state of mind of working in the target language. And it's also really important to instill self-reflection. So this is something that would happen towards the end of class. We do have digital exit tickets that are like right there that your students can complete digitally. So this one, this example exit ticket right here, asks students to monitor themselves. How well did you understand what was going on in the survey? And they can give you their answer. I understood well, not so well, so-so. And you can, and then they can also reflect on how well they stay in the target language. And these are more like, there's not a right or wrong answer. It's just getting students to really think about themselves and the effort that they're putting into class. We also have printable exit tickets. So you can see an example of that one here, where students can use these nice little smiley faces to indicate how well they understood, and they can give some sort of a summary as to what they learned. And it's just a great way to wrap things up, put a bow on your lesson for the day, and really get students taking ownership of their learning as well. Where do you find the exit tickets? You can find those in the resources section. And let me see if I can just really quickly get in and I will show that to you.
On those exit tickets where it says today is, yesterday was, tomorrow is, sorry, I guess a silly question, but what do they like? Do they just write, the box looks really tiny, so it doesn't seem like they can write Monday, Tuesday, like what?
Yeah, I would just do like the number, like OSL, like dose or something like that is what I would do with it. So
like those like 2/8, something like that.
Yeah, I would just put numbers in there. So I'm trying to, I had VOCAS open and it's not. So let me get logged in real quick and then I'll show you where you can find those. I'm telling you, every day on Zoom is my first day, so I'm a little bit slow on things like this. Okay, can you see that I'm in VOCAS Digital now, or are you still seeing my slideshow?
Yes.
You can see them in? Okay, so if you want to find the exit tickets, you're going to go to resources. And here are Spanish ones. You've got a special person exit ticket, a status update. Today I learned. So there's different ones that you can use and you can just download them and print them out. Again, that was in the on the toolbar. You go to the teachers panel and then resources, which kind of looks like lockers to me. And you can find those. You've got all kinds of other resources that you can find in there as well. So lots and lots. There's your question word posters, comic strips if you want to have your students draw. Lots and lots of things that you can use, lots of resources there. All right. Like I said, I'm a little bit slow when it comes to maneuvering around Zoom, so bear with me. All right, so that's your self-reflection, a way of like putting an end to your lesson. So again, well, let's share real quick. What's your winning strategy for teaching class routines? What do you do like at the beginning of the school year to really instill those routines so that they become just automatic for your students and they know what they're supposed to do immediately?
It sounds crazy, but I use Desmos, the math program, and the very first thing I do is an SEL.
Okay.
Because there's a website, I mean, there's a Facebook group, Desmos for world language teachers. And once you create community, students will immediately start sharing in the SEL. And I've been able to use that to refer people to guidance. And then I just used, they know, go in, log into Desmos, and then FER. Every day FER for about 5 minutes.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's such a great way to start class. It's calm and students get to choose what they do. I love that. Great suggestion. Holly says, put everything in Google Classrooms. Yes, that is such a time saver. And then put up your daily routine and homework on the whiteboard. Yes, I think that it's really important for students to see their routine. And a lot of administrators just look for it. Erica says, say the plan out loud. Good. Daily repetition, sharing your Google Doc with French students. Good. Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for sharing your ideas. All right. So that was a lot. Here's what we looked at. We talked about strategies for vocabulary and grammar, interpersonal skills, authentic resources. We explored how you can look at the target culture with your students, how you can give them timely and meaningful feedback, how you can have fun in class with all kinds of different games, both in VOCES or outside. And we talked about maintaining those class routines so that everything feels comfortable and familiar and you can help manage your classroom more easily. So if you have any questions about this particular presentation, you can reach out to me, Melissa F. at vocesdigital.com. You can also talk to Hannah M. at vocesdigital.com. If you have questions about VOCES in general, like how do I sync with my Google Classroom, or how do I, like what other titles do you offer, things like that, just in general about VOCES, you could reach out to info at vocesdigital.com and we would be happy to respond to you with that as well. And thank you guys so much for showing up, taking some time out of your summer. I know you want to be relaxing as much as you can before you go back. I hope that you do have a wonderful school year teaching with VOCES Digital, and would like to just invite you, if you have the time and the availability next year, you could join us in Philadelphia for our CI Summit if you're starting to look into CI and ADI ways of teaching. So thank you, everybody. Any last questions before I stop the recording? Okay, someone's asking for a repeat of Desmos and another thing. So if you could repeat that, that would be awesome.
I just put in the chat, it's Desmos for world language teachers. If you Google it, it'll come up. But make sure you're on for world language, not the math program, and SEL, social emotional learning. And also Teacher Discovery has Flango for free voluntary reading. With Flango, students pick out what book they want to read, what level they want to read, and they just read for the time that I give them to read. But you could track what they're reading, what level they're reading, and they have to do active reading, because if not, it shuts down. But that's because as world language teachers, we know 70% of vocabulary development comes from reading. So I do 10 minutes reading per day.
Awesome. Yeah, that's so important to do. And students really do enjoy that. Thank you for sharing. All right, everybody, have a wonderful school year. If you want to hang out and play a really quick game, you can. I'm going to stop recording first. Have a wonderful school year, and thank you so much for coming.